the darkest chapter of the Barlows. They raised 11 kids who only spoke to animals. First snowfall of winter in northern Montana comes early this year, blanketing the vast wilderness that stretches endlessly beyond Highway 2. It's November 2024, when Park Ranger Alina Vasquez receives a call that will haunt her for the rest of her career. A helicopter pilot conducting a routine wildlife survey has spotted something unusual in the Glacier National Park buffer zone, structures that shouldn't exist in this protected wilderness, and movement that suggests human habitation in an area where no permits have been issued for decades. Alina's all-terrain vehicle struggles through the unmarked forest paths, following GPS coordinates that lead deeper into a landscape untouched by modern civilization. The nearest town, Whitefish, lies over 60 miles away, and even that represents the edge of the inhabited world. Out here, among the towering pines and granite peaks, the silence is absolute, except for the whisper of wind through ancient branches and the distant call of wildlife that has never learned to fear human presence. After 3 hours of difficult navigation, Alina crests a ridge and discovers something that defies explanation. Below, in a hidden valley carved by glacial activity millennia ago, stands a compound that seems frozen in time. 7 buildings constructed from hand-hewn logs and salvaged materials cluster around a central courtyard. Smoke rises from multiple chimneys, and vegetable gardens stretch in neat rows despite the approaching winter. This is clearly an established settlement, yet no records exist of any homestead in this location. What makes this scene even more extraordinary is the wildlife. Dozens of animals move freely throughout the compound, deer grazing alongside chickens, bears sitting peacefully near human structures, wolves lying in the sun as if they were domestic dogs. The natural predator-prey relationships that govern wilderness survival seem suspended here, replaced by an impossible harmony that suggests something beyond normal human-animal interaction. Alina approaches cautiously, her radio crackling with static as the mountain terrain interferes with communication. The buildings show evidence of decades of habitation, weathered but well-maintained, expanded and modified over time with materials that could only have been hauled in by hand or pack animal. Solar panels, clearly scavenged from various sources, provide electricity, while water flows from a natural spring that has been carefully channeled through a system of wooden pipes. The first human she encounters stops her cold. A young person, perhaps 18 or 19, emerges from behind one of the buildings, leading a massive grizzly bear by what appears to be a rope woven from plant fibers. The youth shows no fear of the 800-pound predator, and the bear responds to subtle hand gestures and soft vocalizations that sound nothing like human language. When the young person notices Alina, they freeze, then emit a series of calls that immediately bring other figures from the buildings. 11 young people, ranging in age from approximately 12 to their early 20s, gather in the courtyard. Their clothing is handmade, practical, created from animal hides and plant fibers. Their hair is long and uncut, and their skin bears the deep tan of people who have spent their entire lives outdoors. But it's their behavior that truly unsettles Alina. They communicate with each other through a complex system of gestures, facial expressions, and vocalizations that incorporate animal sounds, bird calls, wolf howls, bear grunts, and deer bleats woven into patterns that clearly carry meaning. More disturbing still, they show extreme fear of Alina herself. At her approach, they cluster together like a herd of prey animals, and several begin making distress calls that immediately summon protective responses from the surrounding wildlife. Bears position themselves between the children and Alina, while birds overhead begin agitated alarm calls that echo through the valley. Alina realizes she's witnessing something unprecedented. A group of human children who have been raised with minimal human contact, developing their own communication system based on animal behaviors. But as she observes more closely, darker implications begin to emerge. These children don't just prefer animal communication. They seem incapable of normal human speech or social interaction. An older woman finally emerges from the largest building, and Alina assumes this must be the children's mother or caretaker. The woman, appearing to be in her 60s, approaches, with the same cautious movements that characterize the children, but she demonstrates the ability to speak English, though her voice sounds unused and rough. "You shouldn't be here," the woman says, her words careful and deliberate. We don't do well with outsiders." Through careful, non-threatening questioning, Alina learns that this is Margaret Barlow, and the children are indeed her offspring. Margaret explains that she and her husband Joseph came to this valley in 1995, fleeing what she describes only as troubles with the government and seeking to live free from the corruption and violence of modern society. They built this compound with their own hands, intending to raise their children in harmony with nature, away from the influences that they believed were destroying humanity. But as Alina speaks with Margaret, inconsistencies in her story begin to emerge. Margaret claims that children chose to communicate primarily with animals, suggesting it was a natural development. However, Alina observes signs that suggest something more deliberate and troubling. The children show symptoms of severe social anxiety when exposed to normal human interaction. They flinch at sudden movements, cluster together for protection, and seem genuinely terrified of standard human behaviors, like direct eye contact or verbal communication. The compound's isolation is more extreme than initially apparent. Margaret reveals that they grow or make everything they need, trading only occasionally with a single contact who brings essential supplies like medicine and tools in exchange for handcrafted items. The children have never seen television, never heard radio, never encountered another human being beyond their immediate family until Elena's arrival. Education appears to have been limited to survival skills and animal husbandry. The children can track, hunt, gather, and tend to crops. But Alina observes no evidence of literacy, mathematics, or awareness of the outside world. When she shows them a photograph of a city, their reaction is one of genuine confusion and fear, as if the image represents something from an alien world. Joseph Barlow is notably absent from Elena's initial encounter. Margaret becomes evasive when asked about her husband, saying only that he goes away sometimes and that he's protecting the family in his own way. The children's reaction to questions about their father is telling. They become agitated and make distress calls that summon protective responses from the surrounding animals. As Alina prepares to leave, promising to return with appropriate social services, she makes a discovery that changes everything. Behind the main cabin, partially hidden by vegetation, she finds a small cemetery. 7 crude wooden markers bear no names, only dates spanning from 1998 to 2019. The graves are too small to be for adults. Margaret's explanation is halting and contradictory. She claims the graves are for babies who didn't make it, suggesting high infant mortality in their isolated conditions, but the dates and spacing suggest something more systematic. Alina begins to suspect that the 11 surviving children represent only a portion of the Barlow offspring, and that those who couldn't adapt to their unusual lifestyle may have been eliminated. The wildlife behavior around the compound becomes more ominous upon closer observation. While the animals show no aggression toward the Barlow children, Alina notices that many species that should be hibernating or migrating are present in unusual numbers. The local ecosystem appears to have been artificially manipulated, with predators and prey coexisting in ways that violate natural law. This suggests a level of control and intervention that raises questions about how this harmony was achieved and maintained. As Alina hikes back toward her vehicle, she notices that several of the children follow her at a distance, moving through the forest with the stealth and grace of wild animals. They communicate her movements to each other through animal calls, and she realizes they're ensuring she actually leaves their territory. The sophistication of their tracking and communication suggests abilities that go far beyond normal human development, but at what cost? Chapter 1 concludes as Alina reaches civilization and contacts her supervisors, but she faces a dilemma that will define the rest of the investigation. The Barlow children are clearly victims of extreme isolation and possible abuse, yet they're also survivors who have developed extraordinary abilities in their unique environment. Any intervention to bring them into mainstream society could destroy the only world they've ever known, while leaving them in their current situation perpetuates what appears to be a form of systematic dehumanization. The question that haunts Alina as she drives away from the hidden valley isn't just what happened to create this isolated family, but whether rescue and rehabilitation are possible for children who have been raised more as animals than as human beings. The discovery of the Barlow compound represents just the beginning of an investigation that will challenge every assumption about family, society, and the essential nature of human development. The state intervention that follows Elena's discovery unfolds like a slow-motion catastrophe. Child Protective Services, accompanied by psychologists, social workers, and law enforcement, arrives at the Barlow compound 3 weeks later to find a family in crisis. The children, traumatized by Elena's earlier visit and the knowledge that outsiders now know of their existence, have retreated even further into their animal-like behaviors. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead psychologist assigned to assess the children, documents behavior patterns that challenge everything known about human development. The Barlow children demonstrate cognitive abilities that are simultaneously advanced and severely stunted. They show remarkable spatial intelligence, environmental awareness, and nonverbal communication skills that far exceed normal human capacity. They can predict weather changes with uncanny accuracy, track animals across vast distances, and coordinate complex group activities through their unique gestural and vocal communication system. However, they lack fundamental human social skills that develop naturally in typical environments. They cannot engage in normal conversation, show extreme stress responses to direct eye contact, and demonstrate attachment behaviors more consistent with animal pack dynamics than human family relationships. Most disturbing of all, they show signs of learned helplessness when separated from their animal companions, becoming catatonic and unresponsive when isolated from the wildlife that has served as their primary social network. The investigation into Joseph Barlow reveals a history that explains much about the family's extreme isolation. Military records show that Joseph served in special operations during the 1980s and early 1990s, participating in classified missions that left him with severe PTSD and a profound distrust of government institutions. His discharge was medical, related to psychological trauma that manifested as paranoid ideation and social anxiety. Margaret's background is equally troubled. Born into a fundamentalist religious community that was later investigated for child abuse, she was removed from her family at age 16 and placed in foster care. Her experiences with the child welfare system were traumatic, involving multiple placements and documented abuse. When she met Joseph in 1994, both were seeking escape from a society they perceived as hostile and corrupt. Their retreat to the Montana wilderness was initially motivated by genuine desire to create a better life for their children. Early journals found in the compound describe their vision of raising children free from the violence, materialism, and social dysfunction they associated with modern civilization. They intended to create a natural paradise where their offspring could develop in harmony with the environment, uncorrupted by external influences. But the reality that developed was far darker than their utopian vision. Joseph's mental health deteriorated in isolation, and his paranoia about outside threats led to increasingly extreme measures to protect the family's secrecy. Children who showed curiosity about the outside world or difficulty adapting to their isolated lifestyle were subjected to harsh punishments designed to suppress normal human social instincts. The 7 graves behind the main cabin tell a story of systematic elimination that goes beyond infant mortality. Forensic investigation reveals that several of the buried children lived well beyond infancy, before their deaths. Medical records, when they can be reconstructed from Margaret's primitive documentation, suggest that children who couldn't adapt to the family's animal communication system or who showed signs of wanting contact with the outside world were denied medical care during illnesses that could have been easily treated. Joseph himself disappeared permanently, sometime in early 2024, shortly before Elena's discovery of the compound. Margaret's account of his departure is contradictory and evasive, but physical evidence suggests violence. Blood traces found in the main cabin, combined with testimony from the children conveyed through their unique communication system and interpreted by specialist anthropologists, indicates that Joseph's final breakdown led to a confrontation that resulted in his death. The children's testimony, painstakingly gathered through months of specialized therapy, reveals the true horror of their upbringing. They describe a childhood lived in constant fear of their father's violent outbursts, punishment systems that involved deprivation of food and shelter for those who used human speech, and forced separation from siblings who failed to conform to the family's animal-based communication requirements. Most disturbing of all, they revealed that their extraordinary bond with local wildlife was not naturally developed, but artificially created through a systematic program of conditioning that began in infancy. Joseph, using techniques he had learned in military training, employed a combination of reward and punishment to shape his children's behavior patterns to match those of animals. Children who responded to human communication were punished, while those who successfully mimicked animal behaviors received food, warmth, and affection. The wildlife harmony that so impressed initial observers was maintained through feeding programs and habitat manipulation that created artificial abundance in the valley. The animals were not responding to the children's natural communication abilities, but to conditioning that associated the Barlow children with reliable food sources. The entire ecosystem had been transformed into a vast behavioral laboratory, where Joseph could experiment with his theories about human nature and social development. Rehabilitation efforts for the surviving children prove extraordinarily complex, while younger children show some capacity for language acquisition and social adaptation. The older children may have passed critical developmental windows that make integration into normal society impossible. They demonstrate profound attachment to their animal communication system and extreme distress when forced to use human speech or engage in typical social behaviors. Dr. Martinez's final report concludes that the Barlow children represent a unique case study in extreme isolation and systematic behavioral conditioning, while they have developed remarkable abilities in their specialized environment. They have been essentially dehumanized through their upbringing. The question of whether they can or should be rehabilitated into mainstream society becomes an ethical dilemma that challenges fundamental assumptions about human nature and individual rights. Some of the children thrive in structured therapeutic environments that gradually introduce human social skills while respecting their unique abilities. Others never adapt, requiring specialized long-term care facilities that can accommodate their animal-like behaviors and communication needs. The youngest children, removed before age 10, show the greatest potential for recovery, while the oldest may never develop normal human social bonds. Margaret Barlow faces charges related to child abuse and neglect, but her own mental state raises questions about her culpability. Years of isolation and psychological abuse by her husband have left her with severe trauma-related disorders. Her cooperation with investigators and genuine grief over her children's suffering suggests that she, too, was a victim of Joseph's increasingly extreme psychological manipulation. The Barlow compound itself becomes a subject of scientific study, as researchers attempt to understand how an isolated human community can develop such radically different social and communication systems. The artificial ecosystem that Joseph created continues to function, even after the family's removal, with wildlife patterns permanently altered by decades of human intervention. The story concludes with a sobering assessment of the long-term outcomes for the Barlow children. While some achieve degrees of integration into society, none ever fully recover from their early conditioning. They remain living examples of how human development can be distorted by extreme isolation and systematic behavioral manipulation. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of parental authority and the fundamental rights of children to normal human social development. It also raises profound questions about the nature of humanity itself, whether the social behaviors we consider essentially human are truly innate, or whether they can be erased and replaced with alternative systems that deny children their fundamental nature as social beings. The hidden valley in Montana remains empty now, gradually returning to its natural state as the artificial feeding programs end and wildlife patterns readjust. But the legacy of the Barlow family endures in the ongoing struggle to help 11 young people reclaim their humanity from a childhood that sought to deny them their very identity as human beings. The darkest chapter of the Barlows is not their isolation or their tragic family dynamics, but their demonstration of how easily human development can be manipulated and distorted. When children are denied their fundamental right to grow up as members of human society, their story stands as a reminder that the bonds between parent and child, however strong, can never justify the systematic denial of a child's basic human nature. In memory of the 7 children who did not survive the Barlow compound, and in hope for the 11 who continue their difficult journey toward reclaiming their place in human society.
Thank you for watching another tale unfold here on NW Storytime. Every story hides a secret, and tonight you uncovered another one. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep the secrets alive. Until next time, stay curious,